important it is to communicate. But what advice is there that we can take on board? Well, I'm pleased to say Fiona Burton from Hinckley, who runs New Insight Therapy. She's a counsellor who deals with grief, and she joins me in the studio this morning. Thank you so much for coming in this morning, Fiona. I just wanted to start by diving into my own personal experience. I mentioned earlier that it's triggered the grief I felt over my nan passing away, because she was only a year younger than the Queen and lived completely different lives. I cannot tell you how different their lives were, but through the same experiences. And I'm guessing that's what you call, it's a trigger, isn't it?
Yes. Good morning, and thanks for having me on. We can be triggered by so many things, and I know my heart goes out to anybody who's, recently lost someone, and this will have really impacted because there's this collective grief at the moment. We can't escape it. So yes, triggers are so common, and just for anybody who is feeling really triggered at the moment, either because they've had their own loss, either recently or at any point, because grief doesn't really have a timeline. It's meaningless, isn't it? It's if you've lost someone close to you, a year, 2 years, 10 years doesn't really matter, does it?
It may lessen, but it doesn't go away.
No,
it just changes.
It doesn't go away.
And Fiona, can you explain for people who don't understand how somebody like my last guest heard the Queen passed away on Thursday afternoon, Friday decided to close the business and go straight to Buckingham Palace? For somebody they don't know, can you explain that?
I loved hearing Vicky's story when she was on the radio earlier. Not because obviously it's sad, but it was just to hear that human emotion of being moved by the loss of someone that you don't know, but just feeling. And what I loved about Vicky's story was that she just went with her emotions. She didn't question it. She said, it doesn't feel appropriate to be working, and I need to take my staff and go down and pay my respects. And although it was difficult, she managed to do it. And then to actually be able to connect with Prince Charles on a human level and recognise that this person is a son who's lost his mum. It doesn't matter the status, does it? Still just human suffering.
She said she felt like a mother. It was a mothering moment. Yeah. And that's one thing I've always looked towards the Queen for. I have step-grandchildren. I'm young to be a grandmother. And I looked at her and the admiration and respect she had from her grandchildren. And I thought, that's so important. And children will only give you that respect if you've earned it.
Absolutely.
And that showed a whole new side to the Queen.
Yes.
So do you have advice for parents, for grandparents, on how to explain this to grandchildren and children?
Yes, and I think this is really been an unprecedented opportunity. We had obviously Princess Diana, who was a very high profile figure, very well loved, but that was very different circumstances because there's a lot of shock around that. This is traditional, pure grief of somebody who was very elderly. She'd become very frail, so it wasn't unexpected. So it's a different kind of experience, isn't it, with losing the Queen? But how parents or grandparents can help children cope is to use this opportunity to talk about death, to normalise it, to help people understand that it's not something to be feared because it's so normal, it's all around us, it's such an inevitable part of life. And although the emotions are huge, they can be scary, there's sadness, there's real heartache, but it's a really good opportunity for children to learn about what happens to everybody, and also for adults to share their emotions. That's such an important thing that parents and grandparents can give as a real gift, because even children from a very young age, even before they can verbalise, they are little sponges and they pick up the emotions of their parents. So they know that they've got this neuroception, they just pick up all the different emotions. They might not know what's going on. So the important thing is to be honest about what's happening. If you're sad, tell them you're sad. If you're confused, tell them. It's so important.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because many people weren't brought up to talk about their emotions or to show their emotions. The Queen was one of those. Charles, to see pictures of Charles on the front of the paper looking as though he's about to burst into tears is new and unusual.
It is.
So if you're somebody who wasn't brought up to share their emotions and is not able to show their emotions and is not able to understand why other people are, what would you say to them?
Well, do you know, that's a really good point. And obviously being a therapist myself, it's something that I, discuss a lot in sessions, is about being emotionally literate. It is a language, and to some people it's quite a foreign language. As you say, they weren't brought up. Some people might be neurodivergent and, just perceive things in different ways. And this is such a big topic, so I'll try and, keep it concise. But people shouldn't be guilty about how they feel. Especially children might think, why am I not feeling sad? That girl in my class is crying and other people, teachers sad, but I don't feel sad. And we feel what we feel, and it's just about accepting our own emotions, our own experience, because we've all got different inputs, all got different experiences. We're not all going to feel things the same way. And this collective grief can really affect us. Anybody that's been to a funeral knows that even if you don't know the person, just sitting there, you feel that wave of emotion coming over you, because it takes you out of your head, slows everything down, and makes you pause and go into your body and actually feel your emotions. And for some people that can be quite strange. But, I think it is good that you're saying that we are starting to now become, as a society, more aware about emotional things.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And I just want to ask, how do you feel? How have you felt? Did you have any sort of particular feelings towards the royal family?
I would say I was very neutral towards the royal family. I know people have very strong negative feelings and very strong love and admiration for the royal family. I would say I was just respectful, but I kind of just saw them as human beings. And what I loved was how the Queen really did adapt. And I think the death of Diana was a real turning point. And she has adapted. She's had to be a strong figure, but she has shown compassion. And it must be so tough for that family. They're in the spotlight, and Charles has just lost his mum, and he's out there having to shake hands with people. So I really felt for them, even though I don't say I loved the Queen, but I did really have a lot of emotion watching and experiencing that.
Fiona Burton from New Insight Therapy, thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us about this morning.